Daniel noticed the hum first. A low 60-cycle drone under the boarding announcement at Heathrow. The kind of ambient noise he'd spent 6 years training himself to hear and then erase. He'd been in London for 11 days, recording room tone in a decommissioned chapel for a documentary score, and his ears were still tuned to silence, the way other people's eyes stay adjusted to darkness after a movie. He didn't think about his parents until the plane began its descent. They picked him up from the airport without ceremony. His mother asked about the flight. His father asked about the exchange rate. It was 3 days later, over a Tuesday dinner that hadn't been declared significant in any way, that his mother said it, not looking up from her plate. "We sold the studio, by the way. You can record anywhere now." Daniel set down his fork. "Sold it to who?" Ronan needed the capital. The app was close. They just needed the last round to close before someone else did. His father said this the way he might report a change in the weather. "You're not upset, are you?" "It's just a room." It was not just a room. Daniel had spent 4 years converting the back half of a leased commercial unit, soundproofing it himself, panel by panel, learning acoustic treatment from forums and trial and error, because he couldn't afford a contractor. He'd signed that lease under a business partnership he'd formed with a former classmate, Priya, specifically so the space could be treated as a shared studio asset rather than a personal one. For insurance reasons, for tax reasons, for reasons that had felt tediously administrative at the time, and now sat in his chest like a coiled spring. His parents did not know this. They had never asked how the studio was structured. They had only ever seen a room with foam on the walls, useful, apparently, only insofar as it could be liquidated. "How much did Ronan get?" Daniel asked. 10 million, his father said, and there was pride in it, unmistakable. The kind of pride that had never once attached itself to anything Daniel had built. "Series A. It's real money, Daniel. Real investors." Daniel nodded slowly. He was doing the math already, not out of spite, but because his mind simply worked that way now, trained by years of signal processing to isolate the one frequency that mattered from everything around it. The studio wasn't his to sell. Not entirely. Priya's name was on the lease. Priya's signature would have been required for any transfer, any sale, any change of use. He asked, carefully, who signed the sale paperwork? His mother's expression flickered. A half set of something she covered quickly. "Your father handled it. He had access to your email. I gave him access to forward invoices, not to execute contracts. Don't be dramatic," his father said. "It's family. We didn't think it would be a problem." Daniel didn't respond. He excused himself early, said something about jet lag, and went upstairs to the guest room that had once been his childhood bedroom, now repurposed with a treadmill and a stack of Ronan's old trophies nobody had thrown out. He called Priya at 11 p.m. She picked up on the second ring, already tense. She'd gotten a notice from the landlord's office that morning about a change of tenancy filing she hadn't authorized. "Daniel, what is going on?" "There's paperwork with your dad's signature on it. Not yours, and definitely not mine." "I know," he said. "I just found out tonight. This is a breach. Actual breach, not family drama breach. He signed a transfer he had no authority to sign." "I know," he said again, quieter this time. There was a pause on the line. Priya, more practical than he was, more used to contracts than feelings, said, "Do you want me to handle this the clean way, or the polite way?" Daniel looked at the ceiling. He thought about the chapel in London, the particular silence of a room built for reverence, how even empty rooms hold the shape of what happened in them. "The clean way," he said. The call came 4 days later, not to Daniel but to his parents, from the leasing company's legal counsel, informing them that the sale of the unit was void, that the funds already disbursed to the buyer would need to be returned pending resolution, and that a formal breach of lease claim was being filed by the studio's co-signatory. The letter used words like unauthorized transfer and material breach and potential liability, words that landed in the house like something breaking in another room, audible, undeniable, impossible to smooth over with a dinner table tone. His mother called him into the kitchen holding the letter like it might combust. "What is this? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Daniel said, and it was true. "I told Priya what happened. She's the co-owner. She has every right to contest an unauthorized sale. You could have just let it go. It wasn't mine to let go of. That's the point you're both still missing." His father, for the first time in the conversation, said nothing. Daniel watched something shift in his face. Not guilt exactly, something closer to arithmetic. The recognition that the $10 million sitting in Ronan's company account now had a shadow attached to it. A clawback risk. A lawyer's letter with real teeth. "We didn't know it was structured that way," his mother said, quieter now. "You didn't ask," Daniel said. "You never asked how any of it worked. You just assumed it was small because it was mine." Nobody argued with that. The deal wasn't reversed. Not entirely. Priya's attorney and the leasing company eventually negotiated a settlement. Partial funds returned, the lease reassigned properly. Damages paid to cover the 6 weeks the space sat improperly transferred. Ronan's round closed anyway, a few weeks later, with different money filling the gap. Daniel didn't feel triumphant when he heard this. He felt something closer to tired, the way he imagined a technician feels after finally isolating a fault in a circuit that had been quietly failing for years. Relief, but also a kind of low grief for how long it had gone unnoticed. He didn't get the studio back. He got something else instead. A signed acknowledgement, buried in the settlement language, that the space had been his to build and someone else's to unmake, and that this distinction, however belated, was now a matter of record. His mother never apologized directly, but she started asking occasionally what he was working on. Small questions. Underqualified ones. He answered them anyway, because refusing felt like its own kind of dead air, and he'd spent enough of his life learning that silence, chosen carelessly, says more than anyone intends.